Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote often of water and how it took part in his emotions. Sara Teasdale wrote conflictingly about fire and the intensity of the heat that accompanies the dancing flames. The conflict between fire and water is conveyed through poets Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and Sara Teasdale in their literature Rain and Summer, Rainy Day, Embers, and O Day of Fire and Sun. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was born on February 27, 1807. He was born in Portland, Maine, where he spent the duration of his childhood. Longfellow left Portland, Maine to attend Bowdoin College in 1822. It was here that he met Nathaniel Hawthorne. He held the 4th rank in his class at graduation. Upon graduating, Longfellow went on an extensive tour of Europe, where he visited France, Spain, Italy, England, and Germany. During his stay in Madrid, Longfellow met Washington Irving. When Longfellow returned to the United States after his 3-year-long tour of Europe, he took a job as a teacher. His career as a teacher involved translating French, Spanish, and Italian. Longfellow was offered a job as a professor at Harvard and began his work in 1837. He labored as a professor at Harvard for 17 years before he retired in 1854. All the while, Longfellow was pursuing a writing career and dealing with an emotional roller coaster of a life. Longfellow went from moments of exuberance to episodes of crippling pain. He married Mary Storer Potter in 1831. However, the marriage lasted only 4 years. Mary died in 1835 from a miscarriage, while Longfellow was on a trip out of the country. After a period of recovery, Longfellow began courting Frances Appleton. The two were married in 1843 after courting for 7 years. Their marriage was a happy one until Frances' tragic death in 1861 as a result of a fire. Early on the morning of March 21, 1882, Longfellow was feeling pains in his stomach. Later that morning, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was pronounced dead.
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow expressed his emotion through nature. He particularly expressed his feelings through water. He wrote a poem called Rain and Summer that depicted how blessed the rain and water made Longfellow feel. The narrator states that the rain is beautiful, the sight, the sound, and the feel. Longfellow wrote that schoolboys enjoyed it. Also, an old farmer cherished the rain for nourishing his crops, and even oxen standing in a field seemed to give thanks for all the plentiful water. The poem caught the essence of Longfellow's happiness. The rain in the poem gave the world life. It inspired the narrator. It gave the crops of the farmer the water it thirsted for, and the oxen were replenished by the falling rain. Critics were responsive to this emotion Longfellow put into his literature. They agreed that Longfellow was by far the most popular and well-known poet in the states of that time period. Not only was Longfellow well-known, but he was also highly respected among the people. They saw him as an icon. He wrote in a style that could only be classified as American. He used Victorian American ideals such as morals and spirituality. Longfellow references God and professed his spirituality through the poem Rain and Summer when he wrote, "Their large and lustrous eyes seem to thank the Lord." He was talking about the oxen in the field, but at that point is still there. The critics exclaimed that Longfellow brought truth to his poetry. He showcased America's violent past with the Indians instead of hiding it. For example, Longfellow actually made the Indians the heroes of his literature rather than the socially accepted white male hero. Still, he was loved by the American public.
Longfellow's poems were simple and easy to recite. For this quality of his poems, they were told by firesides and gatherings, where Longfellow was coined with the term known as a fireside poet. But not all of Henry Wadsworth's poems were happy ones. When using water as a way to express himself again, Longfellow wrote a dark poem named Rainy Day. This poem expressed a different kind of emotion than that of Rain and Summer. It was a poem of grief and sorrow.
Longfellow began his poem by saying, "The day is dark, cold, and dreary," setting a dark tone upon the poem. A vine is overtaking a wall and it gives in to the wind. In the second stanza, the narrator compares the dark day to the darkness of his own life. He can't get the past out of his head. In the third and final stanza, the narrator is sad but has hope for the sun behind the clouds. Rain is fate and will undoubtedly fall in every single person's life. The rain in this poem represents the deep sadness and gloom that comes over people's lives. David Barber, a critic of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, referred to Longfellow as the founding father of American poetry. Barber felt that Longfellow worked like an artist to write emotions that struck with the public. Another critic found it difficult to analyze Longfellow at all in the 21st century. The critic didn't want to analyze Longfellow unfairly, especially because he was so incredulously popular in his own era.
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow used nature to express his emotions. He used water in two different ways, one for happiness and the other for gloom. Longfellow proved through the two poems that water has an unpredictable path. He sometimes used a strict rhyme scheme, while other times, such as in Rain and Summer, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow used a rhyme scheme that was changed to fit the feel of the poem. In Rain and Summer's case, the rhyme scheme is made to match the beat of the rain. In opposition to Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's writing about the erratic nature of rain, Sarah Teasdale wrote of the burning passion of fire and how it fell into Teasdale's own life. Sarah Teasdale was born in 1884 in St. Louis, Missouri. Teasdale suffered from poor health and was kept from going to school until she was 9 years old. When she was finally well enough to go, she attended an all-girls school. Teasdale and her friends found an interest in poetry, and they all wrote together. Teasdale published her first volume of poetry in 1907. She continued to write poetry as a young adult. She married Ernst Filsinger in 1914. The couple moved to New York City in 1916, where Teasdale found inspiration for her poems. The marriage between Sarah Teasdale and Ernst Filsinger quickly fell apart. The pair divorced in 1929 after 15 years of being unhappy together. Later in life, Teasdale's health rapidly declined. She was diagnosed with pneumonia. She overdosed on sleeping pills in January of 1933. Sarah Teasdale's death was ruled as suicide. Though Teasdale's life ended tragically, her career was one of hard work in which she had accomplished several things. She won the Poetry Society of America Prize in 1917. She also won the Columbia University Poetry Society Prize in 1918.
2. Teasdale shows her emotion through her poem Embers. In Embers, the narrator believes her youth is gone forever like a doused fire. The flames that symbolize the narrator's past will no longer be able to dance in the wind because the fire was destroyed. The narrator isn't deeply saddened but feels remorse from the little pains that she knows will never go away. Eventually, the narrator finds her youth again. She is relieved of an ashen cloak, and she is graced in a new garment. Her youth is back like a flame coaxed by the wind. Similar to Embers, Sarah Teasdale wrote another poem called O Day of Fire and Sun, in which Teasdale used fire to paint a picture of passion. The scene of the poem begins on a beach under the intense burning of the sun. The narrator's spirits are unfettered as she is speaking with an unknown man. It is a joyous day. However, the day is then just a memory that is branded into the narrator's mind. She knows she can no longer return to that day under the hot sun. Sarah Teasdale had this way of making one feel emotion presented while reading her poetry. It was clear that Teasdale wanted more from life. However, the feelings that she presented are the reasons why Teasdale was recognized for the awards and prizes she received.
The two authors, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and Sarah Teasdale, wrote of contradicting elements. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow used water as a way to show how he was feeling. Through his happiness and through his gloom, water played a significant role in the literature that Longfellow presented. In opposition to Longfellow, Sarah Teasdale used the element of fire to spark passion within her poetry. She referenced flames and ashes to give another dimension to her work. Together, the two poets represent elements that our world needs.